Hello everyone. Let's talk subtraction today. So, a couple things for us to remember with subtraction before we find our things. Let's think about what we wish we should remember. Or questions to ask. What are some things we should ask? First of all, we should always make sure that we're setting up our subtraction in a way that we can subtract, meaning our larger value is on the top and our smaller value is on the bottom. So the first thing we should ask ourselves is, can I subtract? And if you ask that question first, you're going to be able to know that you can set up your problem or your math algorithm in a most appropriate way. I also want you to keep a note of where your digits are. Where are my digits? Which means we want to make sure that we're focusing on lining up correctly. So let's take a look at that lineup. Are my numbers in order? Are they lined up? And when we do that, we think about our place value. So this is where we think about our place value, which means, are my ones lined up with my ones, my tens lined up with my tens, and so on, okay? And the last thing I want to remind myself is what are the number values? What are my numbers worth? What are my digits? Let's go with digits. What are digits worth? What are their values? Okay? What are their values? And that will help us when we have to do what we call regrouping. So let's do a problem together and just remind ourselves, because I think a lot of us probably know most of this, and so this is going to be a little bit of a review for you. So let's take a look at a subtraction problem. Let's go with something like 520, or let's go with 532 minus 209. So if you're going to follow along with me, let's just write that down. We know that 532 is larger than 209. So that's going to go on our top here. So 532 minus, and we said 209. 209. Now, I want you to keep in mind that notice how my digits are equally distant. So I know it's very clear that my ones, my tens, and my hundreds are lined up correctly. And that's really important, because once we start working with our numbers and we start adding different things in, it gets a little bit confusing if we're all scrunched together or our numbers are twisted. So make sure that we're taking a look at that. I mean, right now, I kind of want to note this. Remember, this is my ones column, this is my tens column, and this is my hundreds column. So it's just kind of a little bit of a reminder right there. Ones, tens, and hundreds. Okay. So let's take a look at how we're going to subtract. All right. First thing I want to know is, can I subtract? Is this possible? Okay. So obviously 532 is larger than 209. We covered that. So we're going to go over to our ones section. Now when I do this, I like to do all of my regrouping at once before I subtract. So I like to ask my questions first, okay? So first thing I want to know, can I subtract 2 minus 9? Cannot do that. So what am I going to do? I'm going to regroup. I like to use that word regroup because that's what I'm doing. I'm taking and I'm changing the grouping of my ones, tens, and hundreds columns in order to make their value worthy. So I know that I have a 2 here in my ones. I'm going to have 2 ones, but I have my 3. Now I'm going to ask you right now to tell me, what is the value of 3? I'm going to give you a pause. Oh, that's right. I think somebody said that. The value of 3 is actually 30, not 3, because it's in our tens column. So it's really saying 3 tens, or 3 groups of 10. Excuse me. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change that 3, okay? And I'm going to change that 3, and I'm going to take from it, and I'm going to make that 3 a 2. So now instead of having the value of 30, I now have the value of 20, but I have to give something. I got to give that remaining 10 to something, so I'm going to give it to my ones column. And my 2 here, I'm going to make a 12. And the reason I'm going to make a 12 is because I took away the value of 10 from my tens column. It went from 30 to 20, so I had to do something with that extra 10. So I'm going to put my 10 here in my ones column. So 10 plus 2 gives me now a 12. Okay, so now I'm going to ask myself, before I subtract, I told you I like to do all this, like to ask my questions first. Can I do 12 minus 9? Yes, I can subtract. Can I subtract 2 minus 0? Yes, I can. Can I subtract 5 minus 2? I certainly can. So now all I can do is go back and actually do the work, because I did the regrouping already. So let's go ahead and do that. 12 minus 9, if I were to subtract that, is going to be 3. 2 minus 0 is 2, and 5 minus 2 is 3. And I end up with 323. So that's our little review of subtraction. Let's go ahead and remind ourselves a couple keywords of subtracting. So when we're subtracting, let's make sure that we're finding, a couple things. We're finding difference. Our numbers are decreasing, or our values are decreasing. The value of our digits are decreasing, or our numbers. What else are we doing here? We're looking for what's remaining. Okay, so that's something we can ask ourselves, what's remaining. We often ask ourselves, and this one is a little bit different. Sometimes we ask, how much more, or how many more? And because of that word more is in there, sometimes that gets a little confusing with addition. But when we ask how many more, we're looking for a difference. So how many more is connected to trying to find that difference at some point. What else are we doing here? We are looking for a minus. We're looking for like a deduction. So these are some of our keywords. What did I say here? Minus. That word, we don't hear too much of it, but deduct, that means take away, which is another one as well. Okay, so here we go, subtraction with regrouping. If you have any questions, reach out and have a great day.